little bit of brief about the book so that you can put the context around. And then we will ask you questions, which I had also given it to you. And then Rachna can jump in and ask any questions she might have. So to just recap, the why this book, the main purpose of this book, over the last 30, 40 years, Ramesh, I have mentored, God knows, thousands of people of all ages. And the questions are same. Whether they are CEO or they are a 25-year-old kid, the questions are same more or less. And regrets are same. People have cried at their midlife crisis, and people have even, sort of admitted that they have wasted their life with me, especially American people, because they are more open and more honest. So that is why I said, well, hi, how many people can I reach? I did massive research in terms of, is there any book like this available? And it isn't. The way we have presented, there are a lot of books on success, but they are on professional success only. There are spiritual books, there are other books, but it's not, today's kid, a 25, 30-year-old kid is not going to read 10 books on how to live his or her life, right? So we wanted to put it all in one book. So how this book is unique, the 5 reasons I'll give you. It focuses on achieving meaningful success through multidimensional and balanced life goals, which are key to happiness, fulfillment, and regret-free life. So you don't suddenly determine at 55 that, oh, this should have been your goal also, right? It is written to be your life coach that will give you help and guidance at various stages of your life. It doesn't matter you are 25, 35, 45, or 55. I've even covered retirement. It not only gives you thought process, roadmap, guides you through critical skill development to succeed in the profession, but it also offers concrete advice for all-round success. And that is very, very short and very to the point for our young people to read. All ideas presented in the book have been tested and have given tremendous results for myself and thousands that I have mentored over the years. So everything is tested. It is packed with anecdotes, insights, and tips from me, but also from very successful people in various aspects of life, such as 2 of you. So that is what makes the book special. I'll just run in 1 minute. What are the chapters in the book? Chapter 1 begins with my story. And my story, I'm not trying to highlight my successes or failures. It is basically my case study. Because I know myself more than anyone else. So I can easily say this succeeded, this failed, I tried this, etc., etc. So it's my case study. Then second chapter is about achieving meaningful success through balanced life goals, which I have always done and taught my children and so many other people. And then we go into the techniques of passion, which is a miracle element for success, excellence, which one has to become best version of themselves. Everyone doesn't have to become a Rahul Dravid or a Amitabh Bachchan, but they have to become the best version of themselves. Thinking out of the box, creativity and innovation, no matter what you do, that is required for your success. Then leadership skills I talk about. And then entrepreneurship we talk about for a lot of young people who are going for entrepreneurship. Then I talk about 4 more gods you need. And these gods are inspirers, role models, mentors, and books. And books include the today's videos and so on. But these are the 4 gods one needs in addition to the real God. And then chapter 9 is on relationships that are so important and so much ignored, especially in the West. India mein phir bhi it is better. And then chapter 10 is mind, body, and soul. How do you take care of that? And that has basics for our young people, nothing new for other people, but still how to set the goal and actually go on achieving that is the critical part. And then giving back. And so for most of these critical chapters, we'll be taking help from people like yourself. So you and Swati, I am today talking about giving back. And that is how we come to the point where we will start asking you questions. Let me just open questions, although I told you that. Rachna, do you want to add anything?
Before you open for the questions, Vivek, one of the things that Swati and I were struck by is the generosity with which you are doing this book. We recognize, knowing you for now almost 2 decades, that you're doing this because you want to share in a meaningful way and touch the lives of especially young people who have their whole lives ahead of them. And the difference between navigating a life in a thoughtful manner and doing it kind of as it comes along is all the difference between having a full life and having regrets. So I think for us, both of us, uh, especially because we know you so well, we see that this comes from a deep place of sharing, and it's your way of giving back. So wonderful to see that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm really excited to read the book when it does come out, and we'll be amongst your first readers, I'm sure. So can't wait to see what comes out, Vivek. I mean, it'll be stellar when you.
And you will be one of the first ones to get it. You will not learn much, but I'm sure your son and daughter will.
Oh, no, no, no,
Now,
no.
also the anecdotes and the accomplishments that you've had, and itself, and the balance that you've achieved in your life. If nothing else, it's the example, and as you rightly said, it's more a case study of. It's kind of the first set of data points that you can use because it's so personal to you.
That's
Yeah,
how I have used. So I have to keep telling Rachna that I do not want to highlight myself.
yeah.
It is the subject that is important, not me. But then the data is all about me, so it is easy to substantiate.
Yeah.
Fine. Wonderful. Thank you, Ramesh and Swati.
Yeah.
Your
I'm just going to interrupt 1 second, and so that we don't get interrupted, I'm just going to tell Mary she should carry on.
Okay, Mary.
Mary, otherwise she'll come and interrupt us. Let her know that she should just
it's
carry
all
on.
right. It's all right, Swati. It is. It's,
Okay, thanks, Mary. Okay.
Sorry.
no problem at all. And if she comes, it's not a problem, Ramesh. It's okay. It's home. But I truly value you. Before I begin, I truly value you, and not just me. Let me tell you, I discussed it with Anant, Ayush, and Preeti, who are the people who we should engage in the book. And you both were all four people supported that. So it's not just me. You know that Ayush treats you as role model, and he is looking forward to meeting you soon. Unfortunately, we could not make it, but all four of us said that you two have to be part of the book. So you have special place in our heart. Okay,
Okay.
so the questions are, it's three questions I'll combine to give you the context, so that question one I have is about your life journey. Question two I have, when you started your professional life, what were you aspiring for? And third, all linked, at what point in your life did you first think of giving back? Where the inspiration came from? So you can combine that and run through your life story any way you want. And both of you have a separate piece. So it should not be a combined story. Combined story after you got married, but before that it should be separate.
Okay.
Go.
So my story was so typical of so many of women of my generation, which was I come from a very conservative upbringing and a very conservative family background, Gujarati Jains from Kutch. So there was a certain standard understanding of what a woman's role in society would be. And so I was subjected to all of those restrictions that so many women of my generation had. So, for example, when I was, I was applying for undergraduate program at NID, at National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad, and my parents were like, no way, that flat out, it was a refusal, and they said, whatever you want to do, stay in Bangalore, stay at home, and then do your studies. And and my mother was very particular that I should study. That was unusual from her standpoint, from a Gujarati standpoint, but that was because she had a truncated. So she was very encouraging that I should go finish college, and I was not going to get married until I finished college. But that's as far as she was willing to go. Whatever I did, I had to do in Bangalore, and there were no design programs. So even smaller things, for example, when I was selected to go for a Mardi Gras in IIT Madras, they just didn't give me permission. So some of my good friends who were also selected, they pleaded with my parents, but there was no way. So the only time that I stood my ground, and I think it was good because I saved it all up for the one big thing that I was going to shock them with, which was to get married to Ramesh. So I think that kind of blew the everything out of the sky, for them. But in that, I stood my resolve and in marrying Ramesh. But I was clear also, and I think this is something that was important to me, and I do want to kind of mention it, that even then, it was not just the end. The means to get to the end were also equally important, which is I wanted to go, if at all I married, I would marry with their blessings. There was no running away. There was no way that I would agree to anything like that. I wanted to make sure that I, went with their blessings, because parents love their kids at the end of the day, however conservative they might be or however traditional they might be. So I think that was my background. And
At that time, Swati, did you think about giving back in any way?
no,
Or
not at all.
not
I
at all?
mean, I have to be very honest and frank. It never even occurred to me. In fact, probably the most dramatic thing about me was that I was very often, very frequently drawn to, becoming an ascetic. So I was like always drawn towards giving up things and going off into some kind of a different kind of a life. So I think that was it. But I never had any leanings towards giving back or doing something, or even believe that I was capable of doing anything. And so at that point, it was very much a personal journey, and it was all about, what did I want out of life and what was my life going to be all about.
Okay, Ramesh.
Yeah, no, and similarly, I mean, so much of our life has been a joint journey because we met each other when we were 18, 19 years old. So now it's, 35 years of over almost, 40 years of being together. But if I reflect upon life before Swati and I met and kind of started walking this journey together, a couple of things that are of importance from the what you're putting together, Vivek. The first is, I've seen my father used to work for the railways, and just before I was born, he decided to become an entrepreneur and give up his job and start a business. And that was very unusual for a South Indian Tamil Brahmin. So his father, who used to work for the Imperial Bank of India, told him that no self-respecting Tambram will start a business. So if you want to start something, you have to leave my house and go.
Oh,
So
boy.
he moved from Madras to Bangalore, what was then Madras, before I was born, to start a business. And so I've grown up in a small entrepreneur's kind of family, and I've seen everything that goes with it. I mean, my father, incredibly hardworking man, but I don't think that. I mean, he had initial flush of success like many entrepreneurs, but then something or the other comes in the way, and life never pans out on that dimension the way you expect it to. So lots of financial challenges. It was still a middle class life, but a stressed middle class life. So for me, one big aspect of as I reached adolescence was my relationship with money. And I had told myself that no matter what, I'm not going to let the lack of money be a factor in my life, and that I would take personal responsibility for it. But I'd never let money become my god, because I saw
Both
the
sides.
challenges of the lack of it, but also how it just messes up even personal relationships, so many things that come in the way. So that was an important kind of aspect of it.
Aspect. Yeah, beautiful.
I would say that's the only thing that I can call out, because the rest of it, academically, I was doing well. And, the big shock in my life was not getting into IIT. So,
But you went to bits, so that is as
yeah.
good or better, actually. Yes.
No, but it was a huge learning about failure, about coming to terms with failure for me, not getting into IIT. Because, there used to be a thing called Agarwal's training courses. And that year in our second PUC, they had delayed our PU exams. In Bangalore, there was some strike, public government strike. So they delayed the PU exams to come exactly in the middle of our IIT entrance exams. And
Oh,
pretty much there were about a group of 10 of us from PU who would work very hard and who were going to be the ones, expected to get into IIT. And when this postponement happened, 6 of them just stopped studying for IIT and said, screw that, we're going to work on our, the more important one, which is PU. I was one of 4 of us who didn't, because I was so sure I was going to get into IIT. And in Agarwal's training, they would give you expected ranks.
Okay.
All my expected ranks were less than 100. And I did exceedingly well in the exam. So the parties that I had promised to my friends were 1 to 10 rank, All India, this treat, 10 to 25, 25 to 50. And finally, Vivek, I didn't get in.
Wow, that must have been a shock.
It was, my world collapsed. I literally went into a deep depression. And, coming out of that, like Swati said, in a different context, it was just the care that the parents had. And for me to come to terms with saying, you know what, I can't control outcomes. I can only control my inputs. So it was a defining moment for how I dealt with life after that. But I would say those are the only things about life before I met Swati that were distinctive for me.
So you describe your relationship with money, but at that time you also did not think of giving back as a big thing.
Absolutely. Zero. There was no concept of it at all.
And then let's bring you two together, and then you pursued your professional dreams. You can talk a little bit about it. And then first time, when did you think about that, oh, this is not for me, I need to do something bigger?
Well, I think that we started thinking about the initial years were all about us, to be very honest, even when we went off. And I think that our first investment was in ourselves. So the first thing was we wanted to, and what happened with especially for me, because I was the more conservative one, Ramesh was a little bit already unshackled, but I was still the constrained one. So the only thing that I had unchained myself was in saying, I'm going to marry this man, and stood my ground on that. But I think what happens is, and especially when this happens at a very young age, I think it serves as a bit of a trampoline, for you to jump off higher and higher and take greater and not consider that it's anything. You're no longer constrained by society or what they think or any of that. So you really build a strong sense of self and wanting to do what you feel. So you use yourself as a moral compass. So whether it was to leave India in the midst of our professional careers, to return in the mid, having been successful there, to return, to even to work on urban issues, even though everybody told us when we came back, they said, what are you guys doing? First of all, leaving careers there and coming and doing some NGO stuff here. And then where are you going with cities? All the problems of India are in our villages. And why are you looking at cities? Yes. So, that we were, even when we were faced, when we started, there was so much criticism from political systems, from all kinds of.
But Swati, just to rewind a little bit, when and what triggered this to you? You were having flourishing careers. You were in New York, I believe, or US, and then suddenly, what made this important for you?
I think for me, I already started feeling personally. For me, I ended up doing my master's degree at Pratt University on architecture and design, etc. And then I started working in one of the top companies over there as well. We moved in London. Even before that, we were in the US. And I was expecting somehow that my design and the skills that we were doing, there's a certain, I think all youth comes with that idealism, right? That it has real impact, that it can change how people live. And then you realize the nitty-gritties of it, that even this ultimately ends up being a business. So I think somewhere along the way, I felt tired of doing, dissatisfied that, to do things for the private sector, for the private good, for Fortune 500 companies, even though at the end the products were great, etc. It felt very limited. So it felt like design had only become like a private good, and not we were not doing anything on change. And we as youth and as students, you read about so many inspiring figures like Jane Addams and Jane Jacobs, and so many of them who did such dramatic stuff and changed the way that cities were. And so you realize kind of at some level there's a disappointment and a certain sense of disquiet that what I'm doing is not what I imagined I was going to do. And then we had
Sorry. Before I go to Ramesh, I just wanted to know, so how did India figure into that? You could have done same thing there.
Yeah. So we would keep coming back on holidays, like every year, most NRIs, like you all did, I'm sure. And every time we would return, it's the classic NRI syndrome. You will complain from the time you land at the airport till the time you get the departure gate. ये ठीक नहीं है, वो ठीक नहीं है. खाना तो अच्छा है, great to be with family, but साला, why the hell can't they get the roads done correctly? Why should there be so much pollution and garbage and all the things that are wrong with India? But we would be waving our magic wands, sitting comfortably in our NRI homes 5,000 miles away. So somewhere, and we would have these get-togethers with other NRIs, and invariably those Friday evening conversations will be about something wrong with India.
India, yeah.
The problem with India is ...
Yes.
Fill in the blanks with your favorite subject,
Yes.
But we began to feel a little tired about that, something about this is not correct. It's a little hollow.
Well, it also because I think in the early days, we were so comfortable thinking that it was somebody else's problem to solve and not ours.
Yeah.
And I think that we must, hat tip to the United States, and because that is where we actually suddenly had an aha moment. And we literally tripped upon it. We had our mailboxes, how we have our mailboxes stuffed with all kinds of literature and ads and all that. One of them was we just moved into Norwalk from New York, and we moved into Norwalk, early new home, etc. And we wanted to get to know our neighbors. And so we saw this pamphlet which said, park cleanup, come and meet on Saturday morning, come in your, Sunday best, and then, we'll give you pitchers and forks and rakes, etc. And we'll have cold beer afterwards. So we were thinking at that time, Ramesh and I were thinking, what is this park cleanup? It's a very odd thing. I mean, and remember, this is so many years ago when these were not even on our radar screen. Today, we are a lot more active as citizens. The nation has a lot more active citizenship. Yeah. But in those days, it was the most bizarre concept. And we said, so what is this for? So anyway, we showed up. We said, okay, fine. We wanted to get to know our neighbors. So we showed up at the park, dressed in our like shabby stuff. And people gave us bags and pitchforks, and there was no chit chat, nothing. And so we just went, we were given a task and pick up leaves and clear out this, etc. We did all of that.
And then Monday morning, after this was over, Monday morning, I was taking the commuter train to New York. And standing like 10 feet away from me, dressed in the same suit that I was dressed in, reading the Wall Street Journal, was the guy who was leading the park cleanup operation.
Wow.
So I went up to him and said, hey, wait a second, are you not the guy we were there in over the weekend? And he said, yeah. I said, I thought you were some tree-hugging NGO activist kind of a guy. And it turned out he was a banker like me. So we talked all the way in to the city in the train. And, this was like, as Swati was saying, it was an eye-opener to say, these are just regular people, but who've carved out a piece of their time and their lives to volunteering to clean up the park. And one thing led to another. It was like a Pandora's box opening up. And we discovered this whole world of regular people giving their time for things that matter to them. And this was important. It was not something that was a casual thing for them.
Yeah.
I think what happens then, subsequently is, as it is, I'm sure you would empathize with this, but the moment, a certain filter is opened and you can see through that, it's like a cascading. I mean, suddenly the world, you're able to see that particular color everywhere, right? So it became like that for us. And then, we got so engaged to say, why do citizens do this? Why are they getting engaged in schools and volunteering here and volunteering in old age homes, etc.? We found the whole thing fascinating, and we kept wondering, and we realized then that so many of our friends, there was somebody or the other in that family who was volunteering somewhere. And so this whole concept of volunteerism became something that we were curious about. Then we started reading up about, what are institutions, about democracy. And I mean, it was literally like a, whole world kind of opened up for us. And we kind of felt that we parachuted ourselves into a great country where generations of others had built, and we were kind of, being successful in this place. But it really wasn't just our success. It was reflective of all the platform that had been built by so many generations before, in that country.
Absolutely.
And so while we could have volunteered there and we were tempted to say, hey, then maybe we should also get engaged, I think both of us, I think it was true for both of us. We kept feeling very guilty about volunteering there when there were so many large
Yeah.
problems in India
Yes.
that hadn't, and who was going to solve those? And that was the genesis of us coming back to say, we need to do what our calling was to come back and do something here. So
And the trigger also was because, I mean, going back to the money thing, one of the first conversations that Swati and I had when we started seeing each other and feeling that, I mean, for me, it was instantaneous. I saw her and I said, I'm not going to let go of this woman. But the conversations we would have obviously included things that are important to each other. And I had shared with her my view about money. And Swati she came from a much better off family, but she was completely, her attitude to money was completely similar to mine. She said, yeah, I don't care about money. And so and the careers that we had there gave us not only professional success, which I think you've also written about, we learned a lot in our careers, and that was important. We learned, we wanted to be really good at what we were doing. For her, it was in design, and for me, it was in finance and banking, and we wanted to be excellent.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that you can't approach an agenda, any ambition, whether it's for your own self or whether for changing the world, without a set of skills.
Yes.
yeah. So we really filled up our toolbox. I think that was another important thing for both of us, that not only did we need to excel in whatever our chosen area of, work was, but we also need to, along the way, build professional skills, which is, working in a large firm, listening to what customers want, understanding needs, finding solutions. What does it mean to work in teams? All of these things were very equally important. So we literally kind of filled up our toolboxes while we were there before we returned. And I think that was an important activity that we kind of
Those are the 4-5 chapters, Ramesh, what you are describing. Passion, of course, both of you are very passionate, and then excellence, then thinking out of the box, innovation and creativity, and then leadership. That is exactly what the book covers. That those are the things you are describing in a little different way. But we also tell them how to develop that. Yes.
Yeah. So to your question about why India,
yes.
as we said, but why that time in India when we were so young still? I think it's because we both had more than met our financial goals, because we felt we wanted to live a comfortable life. There's no question about it. But how much do you need to live a comfortable life?
Right.
And I think if we can credit ourselves with one single decision which changed the course, it was this point about saying this much is enough.
Yeah.
That we didn't want to change the goalposts and, let's get a second house somewhere. And, we just didn't, we said, don't shift the goalposts.
That takes a lot of clarity of thoughts.
It's a slippery slope otherwise.
Yes.
Because when is it enough? Because it's never enough. You can get so trapped by that sense of saying, oh, maybe perhaps one after this, and maybe this one stock option, if we allow it to vest, then we can also have this.
It's never. So you landed in India, and how did the first institution you started was Janagraha or something else?
Well, we didn't have any. That was another interesting learning. So we felt we had put some boundary conditions. And again, going back to the point that Swati made, having picked up professional skills and just approaching things with a certain amount of clarity and some strategic thinking and so on, we said, okay, here we are in our early 30s. This is the rest of our life. How are we going to do this? And the ambition was very large, because otherwise we could have volunteered in a soup kitchen, right? So we said,
yes,
we want to transform urban India. So let's give ourselves this massively grand ambition, spend the rest of our lives working on transforming urban India. But we had no clue how to do it. We didn't know anything about governance or politics or NGOs or any of that. So I think the first thing was to have humility, to say, we don't know. So we spent the first 2-3 years. We came back in 1998, literally just going around, and it would be like follow the trails. It's like, Alice in Wonderland. Somebody put the breadcrumbs and you just follow them. So we meet somebody and they would say, oh, you want to know about this stuff? You should go and meet this chap who's doing great work in Bhubaneswar. So we take a flight and go off to Bhubaneswar and meet that fellow. Or you meet Vijay Mahajan in Hyderabad,
Mm-hmm.
So we allowed that process to unfold.
I think I would also say that we arrived at it with a fair amount of naive idealism. And I think in retrospect, Vivek, I think it's very important that that was the way we were
Yes,
at that time,
yes,
because otherwise we would have quailed, at what the task was, because this stuff was incredibly hard and it was
yes,
incredibly complex. And
yes,
unlike, the private sector, there's no quarterly earnings, no big customer deal that you can declare victory over. This was social change, so you can't declare victory. You don't have control over most of the outcomes, and every problem virtually is multi-layered, from the
yes,
garbage pile outside your house to whatever laws that you want to try and change. So I think it was good that we came with it. So, but because we came in, I think part of it was
Yeah.
that we had to persevere, right? That we had to stay the course. And I think what ended up happening was that we realized along the way that we had to build institutions. And that was the genesis of Janagraha. So somewhere along the way, we realized that we couldn't piggyback off of something else which was always on unstable ground. That if we wanted stable ground, then we had to build our own institution, and that institution would be the foundation upon which we would have to build our work. And so
Yeah. So for early years, we didn't have, so to pick up on Swati's point, we didn't have the institution building as the agenda. So Janagraha, for example, or on the microfinance side, Jan Lakshmi, neither of those existed, and neither of those even, we didn't begin with those.
yeah,
We began by saying, let's do something on urban change.
okay,
Let's do something on microfinance. So there's a very good NGO in Bangalore called Myrada, which does rural microfinance. So again, through that journey, I had come across them. Through the urban governance journey, Swati and I had come across Public Affairs Center. So we volunteered first with those institutions. We literally went and said, hey, we have skills. We have a desire to make a difference. Can we be of help? And both those institutions gave us an opportunity to start getting engaged. And as they got engaged, we realized that our ideas were getting crystallized. And at some point, it took more than 2-3 years. It's when the institution idea came. So Janagraha was formed in 2001. Jan Lakshmi was formed in 2004.
So also because I think at the time that we started Janagraha, there were literally no institutions like it. So I think for us to do any kind of serious work, we needed to make sure that there was a stability to that institution. And then, like you said, you know yourself best, right? So who would you trust more than yourself? So we
Correct.
realized that we had to start the institution ourselves and be the leaders of that institution rather than work, because also we were clear that our agenda was a certain manner. So we couldn't, you can't get derailed, and you needed to have focus. This was already such a large agenda with so many multiple aspects. It's very easy to get
absolutely.
vision.
So you started with humble approach and keep learning and keep tweaking, keep learning, keep tweaking. I think that approach it was probably very important, because if you had come with a fixed idea, this is what I'm going to do. You guys don't know what you are talking about. I have learned it in New York and I'm going to cut and paste it in India. All that would be disaster, I think. So I think your approach was.
And the other reason for the institution is the point that Swati had made. We've realized fairly quickly that this is going to be, it's complicated work. It's incredibly difficult. There's no easy victories. And so the only way to solve this problem, and Indians are actually not good at this, is to build institutions.
Yeah.
Because what will survive, and if you reflect back on what you said at the beginning of this conversation, when you commented and complimented Shrikant and the team, for us sitting yesterday and watching that program gave us extraordinary satisfaction. Yes. Because we've, nurtured that institution, handed over the baton to a good CEO who knows what he's doing, mentored him for 2-3 years, and now our role is different,
Yes.
In that institution. But that's what it takes. It takes 20-30 years.
So other than time, Ramesh and Swati, there must have been times when it was very tough. At least one instance of something that happened when you really questioned yourself, and either why the hell did I do this, and how did you overcome that situation? Just one instance is good enough, the hardest one that you both faced.
I think that if I had to pick something, Vivek, I would pick it very early in the Janagraha journey for me. When we first embarked upon creating an entire campaign for citizen participation, participatory budgeting, in fact, was the first campaign. and we put out ads in the newspapers. We approached it like it was a private sector initiative. So it was literally within the first year of starting Janagra, and we were going out in, like, literally every day, 2-3 times, doing grassroots mobilization, organization of citizens, having so many meetings, etc. And I remember that one day, I mean, we were thanking everybody for coming, participating, and saying, sir, yes, madam, this, that, to everybody, every citizen who came in, and responded to our ads. By the way, we were blown away. Nobody expected anything. We were run off our feet by the calls that we got. Our campaign was, if you think it's a fool, if you think that it's foolish to dream for Bangalore, then here are some fools, who have dared to dream. And we had Nandan Nilikani, we had Devi Shetty, Syed Kirmani, and Vishnu Vardhan, and say, here are some fools who had big dreams. If you're a fool, call us. And people just called us, I'm a fool, what do you want me to do? So it was like insane. But then we actually got them into the office, or we had meetings with them at their areas. I remember one time, I was ignoring my family at that point in time because there was so much work that was happening. We literally lived in that office that we had started this initiative.
Vivek, there were 2 years where we had not answered our physical mails from our life in the US.
We had checks and things,
It
and
was
taxes.
tax demands and so on.
Oh my
It was,
God,
the pile of letters was more than 2 piles going up to the ceiling.
I mean, our kids Shinori used to have nightmares, saying, wake up crying and saying, what happened? There was this monster called Janagra, and it ate up my parents. Yeah, those kinds. But in any event, that one day, I think I was really, I was exhausted. And then I had this one guy who came in and said, I've been here 15 minutes already. I left my work early to come for this meeting. When are you going to start this? And he was so rude. And I was saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And, I was apologizing. And somewhere along the way, I just burst into tears. And I had to rush off to the balcony. And then I was there crying for the rest of the day. And when Ramesh came to find me, he said, what happened? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing all this. Why am I not in the Bahamas sitting and, enjoying my life? What am I sitting and doing all this here? I mean, I can't understand. We made a wrong choice here, I think. And so Ramesh listens to me carefully and listens to me. And then he says to me, we are sitting outside. So we say, who do we expect? Do we agree that there's so much that needs fixing here? And if we agree upon that, then who will do this? It can't be that auto rickshaw fellow who's standing there, right? Because he's just, he has to make his ends meet and he has no time for this. We have been so uniquely fortunate. We've been so blessed with good health. We've met our financial needs. We are still only 32. I mean, and at this point in time, if it's not us, then who else will do anything? I think that was the last time I ever asked this question or ever felt this. And after that, I think it also helps, Vivek, because we're both in this together. So the challenges are extraordinary and there are moments of deep frustration. But the very fact that you have the other person who fully understands, has been there, done that, and is with you on this journey in different ways, perhaps, but I think that helps a lot. It gives us a lot
in the
of strength.
same vein that Swati has said this, and this is part of the challenge. I've never shared this with anyone, but since you asked the question, the one time, the darkest time for me was, the gender challenge of change in India, of anything in Indian society, right? And when we started Janagraha, it was always seen as, Ramesh was the, campaign coordinator. Ramesh was the face of it. And Swati was very comfortable with that. She was not, even though she was pulling half the weight, sometimes very often more than half the weight, she was very happy being in the background, doing the, all the stuff that we needed to do. And whatever it took. The truth of it was both of us giving both our lives. But the truth of it also was that I was getting a disproportionate share of all the visibility. Right. And she was even okay with it until a point where she would tell me sometimes, you're not even introducing me, when we were at a community meeting or whatever else. And I would keep thinking, that's not true. So I'd keep pushing back and denying it to her until one community meeting where, I stood up and started talking and Swati was in the back taking the notes, to And then the man turned around and said, "Who's this woman?"
Okay.
You know, and it kind of was a slap in my face to realize it. And it was a huge moment where I realized that at the risk, and the pursuit of doing something good for society, I had actually taken the most precious thing to me, which is our relationship, and literally eroded it. And I was completely responsible for it. And to me, there's, even though I've always considered myself to be very gender oriented and sensitive to women's issues, largely because Swati is kind of her own agent of change, I had my blind spots. And so to come to terms with it, and to acknowledge it, and then say, you know what, I'm not going to make these mistakes again, but to allow myself to to say I made a mistake and to keep correcting, was a big moment.
Beautiful, beautiful example. I have to keep the clock in mind, so let me keep moving. I think you have described your journey very well. You have so many achievements in both of your lives. How would you rank giving back as one of them? Now, put the picture of not Janagraha, but for a person who is saying, hey, where is the place for giving back for a common person in life? What message would you have for them?
Yeah.
It is the next question. It is number 5, if you have the same one.
Yeah. So I think, because for us, Vivek, unlike, as you said, for most people, for the biggest part of our adult life, now this has been 20,
Yes.
4 years. This is no longer a piece of our life.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is all of our life.
Yes.
And so it's completely bled from the personal to the private to the public. Our holiday photographs, half of them are holidays, and half of them are Swati taking photographs of stormwater drains and street light poles, and so there's no private, public, nothing. But I
Yes.
think that certainly this thing has enriched us. And
Yes. Yes. That is the next question. Actually, you
yeah.
just answered that. Continue. That is the next question. How it has enriched your life?
I think that it's enriched our lives because I think that it's redefined what we think of success. When we think of success, it's redefined how we think of success.
Yeah.
And I think there's no question that the circle begins with the family and whether we have done right by our children or not. And that was always something we were not willing to compromise. That these were life choices that we were making, but we shouldn't strip our kids of any of their opportunities. And so that was important for us. After all, it's not something that they asked for.
Right.
The choice to return has been remarkably successful for us, not just on the social part but also for on the personal front. I think our kids got to know our grandparents, what it is to be a global citizen, but to have an Indian cultural identity. And it also has given them a sense, I mean, regardless of their nightmares or early nightmares, what it is, an appreciation of the lives that not only we have lived, but the importance of being part of that life and our journey that we've had. So I think these were all important, in defining what success meant for us. I think this was a very important thing.
And also on, you already alluded to this a little earlier on, which is because of the nature of the challenges that we were dealing with, which are, they don't come in any standard shapes, boxes, no formula. You have to be incredibly creative and entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And, public change, you could be working on a law, on a reform for 6 years and nothing changes. And suddenly a window opens up. Some new bureaucrat comes in, a new politician comes in, and what you've been working on and it's been stalled for 6 years, in 2 weeks, it can see dramatic progress. So we need to have that nimbleness and flexibility and ability to then, accelerate from 0 to 100 very quickly. So that's a huge way in which it's kind of helped us to think about, how one approaches work.
I would also say that, the kinds of relationships that we've had, the exposure to the kinds of variety, I mean, literally a humongous variety of people, not just, our family, etc. But take you, for example, somebody like I think that doing public change with a level of authenticity attracts the goodwill, and amazing people to sort of join the journey. and it builds and forges remarkable relationships. And I think we have been so blessed and enriched by just that remarkable universe of people that we've been touched.
This is a huge thing. I mean, think about, as Swati was saying, Preeti and you. I mean, we can never forget, Preeti and Bala Janagraha and the book. And I mean, these things have lasted now 20 years.
That's right.
The relationship.
That's right. I always say that I have had lots of professional relationships, but on the non-profit side, I have had the best relationships. And actually, people who have literally nothing. I mean, you and I are very fortunate and somewhat, we should be apologetic, but there are people who I have worked with who have nothing and they put you to shame. But they are so lovely people. It's just so energizing to be with them. So I'll keep the clock in mind and keep moving here.
Yeah.
What advice you have for young generation about giving back?
I think I would say that if I have to say, the first thing is you have nothing to fear. I think if you're the kind of person who is bothered by the things around you and something that is not quite right, that's the starting point, to have that sentiment and then to do something with it. And
I'd say, I mean, I'd say, don't be afraid, that you don't know enough. Don't be afraid that you may end up compromising some life goal you set for yourself. Don't be afraid about your parents or your social circle somehow frowning upon what you're planning to do. It's all going to work out. It'll all work out in exactly the right way. And you need to stay tuned in and listen to your own voice. Not everybody is going to be interested, but in our own journey, we've had so many examples, and part of this, how it's enriched us, is connecting with young people. And there are, for every 100 people, there could be 10, but these are people who've inspired us and give us hope that the future is in good hands. Because they bring that passion and their energy. I remember Jasmine Shah, IIT graduate working in ITC, walked in one day and told us, this is what I want to do. And so Swati and I sat down with him and said, how much do you have money? Do you have enough saved? Because we remembered our life. Yeah. And he said, no, my parents live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Mumbai. So we said, please go back to your ITC job. The next day he returned and said, either you give me a job or I'm going to join some other NGO. And then he came and joined us, and then he ran the Jagore campaign, which we ran with Tata Tea.
Yes.
So I think the first message is listen to your own voice. Even if it's a tiny whisper, don't shut it out. Yeah. There's a way in which you can balance it with whatever professional, responsibilities or obligations you have.
Correct. I think also I would add, in the, as a continuation of what Ramesh was saying about our own challenges and in our life journey of changes, that I think young women who are embarking on their journeys, I think it's easy to think that there's only a particular way of doing things, a very male-dominated way of doing things, of defining how you were going to approach your work, etc. And I think that you end up invariably, very often, we end up feeling ourselves lesser by comparison somehow, because that's not who we are. And I think that women have to actively overcome this and know and believe that their contributions are rich and necessary and different. But the only way to do that is if we put ourselves out there. And I think I would want that message for women who young women who are out there and wanting to make a difference.
Lovely. The one message, Ramesh, I want to share with people is that it doesn't matter at what stage in life you are. You can start giving back. If nothing else, teach your driver's daughter, start the journey wherever you are, however much money you have, because that idea starts with that and you can build into that. Anything you want to add to that?
Completely. In fact, part of the learning for us when Swati said, the US is a great society. All great societies are great societies because of this. Because it's not like some anonymous government is solving it. It is this hundreds and thousands of people adding value and solving local issues in small and big ways. If you give 1 hour a week, that's great. If you tutor your, helps daughter for English, that's great. If you have it in you to do something more, it'll lead you there.
Yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes.
we have so many examples
I
of
think
people who've retired and joined us, like Raghu
Yes,
Srinivasan and
yes,
Chinu,
yes, yes, yes.
joined us after a full career with Grindlays Bank, and then went on to become CEO of Janalakshmi.
We had
Yes.
an old, wonderful, distinguished old man who came in our early days of campaigning for participatory budgeting and said, "I love what you guys are doing. I'm retired. I have all the time in the world. Tell me what you want me to do, and I'm at your service." So I told him, "Okay, then you speak good English. I get so many emails. Can you respond to them so that they're intelligent, thoughtful responses for people who are reaching out to us?" So the man would come every day and just spend
Wow.
2 hours answering our emails. Vivek, he turned out to be an ex-air vice marshal. So
Wow.
we didn't a retired air vice marshal. I mean, it was just,
And
when
every,
we found out, we said, "Oh my God, we're so sorry we're sitting and making you answer." He said, "What? No, it's my honor. I mean, don't think
I'm
of
a
it.
volunteer,
I'm
and
a
this is my
volunteer."
job. And just
Wow.
to finish that story, I know that we're running out of time, but these are the beautiful nuggets.
Doreswamy.
We were in his name was the
Air,
Air Vice Marshal Doreswamy.
uh,
We were in the Prime Minister's office pitching for JNNURM. So, this little meeting room with 6 people, and the PM was there, and the meeting got over. And then this young man, officer sitting behind, tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "I just want you to know, I'm Air Vice Marshal Doreswamy's son, Vikram
Oh.
Doreswamy. I'm from the Indian Foreign Service."
Wow.
And he, to his dying day, talked about his volunteering with Janagraha.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
we have such amazing stories, even in Balajanagraha. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think part of the reason we started Balajanagraha was that, when there is that voice in people that says, "Hey, I'm not seeing something that is right," rather than just looking away to actually respond to it in any small way, how do you actually do that? And it is important. You're absolutely right that it's important that you do something about it rather than still it. Because if you still it, then you've lost the opportunity and that journey completely goes away. So I think whatever you're doing, whatever professional career you are, make this a part of your life. And I think that's a really important message. But the Balajanagra story, as you might recall, I don't know if you remember, but we started that because our daughter was singing at that world peace. She was in that museum, that Ambedkar Bhavan, with her little fifth grade teachers and his school classes, and they were all singing. It was a contest for world peace, so there were all these schools and they all sang beautifully on their world peace. And she came out and she was so excited, and she said, "How did I do?" And she had a solo, and my mother-in-law and I were like saying, "You were wonderful, Shinori. You sang so beautifully." And Ramesh says, "Yeah, but it's all very good, Shinori, that you sang about world peace with your friends. But what are you going to do about it?" And then for the rest of the car drive, he was giving her such a, like, she was in tears by the end of it, and she ran
Oh,
up to her room, and Ramesh said, "But if I don't tell her, who else will tell her?" And I said,
yeah.
"This is not the way. Let me speak to her." But that was the genesis. And I came back and I said, the only way is if we start a program for young children on being engaged in this, that those that want to do it, where's the platform otherwise for them to
Yeah.
engage? And so
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
provide the platform. So that was the genesis of Balajanagraha.
Yes, yes, yes. One question from Rachna. Rachna, you can ask or I can read here. This is not in your list, Ramesh. How can youngsters convert giving back from being an ideal into reality with some practical steps that you can recommend? That is Rachna's question.
Yeah.
Should I read it again?
No.
Yeah.
We got it. So I think part of it is what we've said at the end is it starts with, do you have a voice in your head?
Yeah.
If you don't, you can't manufacture it.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen this, it's like putting Dulux on distemper. It'll simply peel off.
Yes.
You need, for every 100 people we go and address in a college, 50 of them are tuned out. They're listening to the latest Bollywood music or whatever else. And that's fine.
Right.
It's a famous Margaret Mead statement, right? The world only changes by a small handful of people.
That's right.
So all you need is, those 5 or 10 people. And those 5 or 10 people, the message to them is, if you are hearing a voice that says, you know what, something's wrong with this. And that wrong could be that the train is not running on time, could be that the bus system, doesn't have a women's toilet. It could be that the child doesn't have shoes. Any issue. The thing with a country like India is you throw a stone, you'll hit an issue.
That's right. That's right.
So listen to that voice.
Yeah. Rachna, you can go ahead and ask any other questions you have.
No, I mean, I've been so enthralled, not only for the work you're doing, but how well, how articulate you two are. And I'm so glad I had this opportunity. I don't have any questions. Just something funny happened yesterday. I thought I'll share. My 14-year-old teaches the maid, and he teaches her English, and she's now speaking pretty well. So we are basically Hindi bhashi, but his Hindi is weak because he's a Bangalorean. So yeah, last night he was telling her, आप जिंदगी में इससे ज्यादा नहीं बढ़ सकती. So we were very hurt that you can't talk to her like that. I mean, here you are enabling her, and after a half an hour lecture, we realized she'd asked him how she could grow a little taller and become tall like him.
I had a feeling that he had got some grammar wrong.
So thank you so much, and I hope we meet face to face sometime.
And I didn't mention it before, but Rachna has written 6 or 7 books before.
I was wondering how it is that, Rachna was doing this from Delhi to this.
I'm basically a humor writer. Anything you want to be written in a funny vein, I'm always available.
Nice. How lovely. Oh, that's...
And you can think about some possibility where she can help in Janagra as well. She's a good writer. So how it is working is I'm just giving her my PowerPoints that I have used to speak on various subjects, whether it's excellence or passion, and then she is converting into an interesting way to sort of in a chapter.
I look forward to reading this. Have you seen this insanely talented woman who acts in this show called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Yeah, a lot of people. I do a bit of stand-up also, so a lot of people told me to watch it, and yeah.
You watch it, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, great to meet you, Rachna.
Great to meet you too. And
Vivek, we'll see you all tomorrow evening.
Yes, Saturday evening. We'll look forward to seeing you. Ayush will be here as well. And thank you again. I greatly appreciate it.
No, you're doing.
Thank you.
We're so excited to read the book. I've been.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.